Okay, I think we're ready. I would like to call the June 5th, 2024 Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please call the roll.
Chair Vadla has an excused absence. Commissioner Turner. Commissioner Topfest.
I'm here. Thanks.
Commissioner Burton.
Present.
Commissioner Smithwick-Ailey.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Murray.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing and hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. Are there any objections, to approving the agenda? I guess there's two separate questions. Changes or objections? Hearing and seeing none, the agenda is approved. Are there any, we have the minutes from the May 1st, 2024 meeting. Any commissioners have any changes to the minutes? Are there any objections to approving the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes of the regular P&Z meeting of May 1st, 2024 are approved. Public hearings. Resolution PZ 2024-009, granting approval of a conditional use permit for a storage yard within the commercial district at 713 Cahill Lane. This is an agenda item that we have a continuation of the public hearing from May 1st. And so the request, the resolution is before us. Do we have a staff report?
Thank you. Yes, you do. And I am going to spend a little time reviewing the staff report from last time and then providing some summary of the memo that was in your packet this time. And I also want to call attention to public comment that was submitted by Mr. Rutoff that is also in your packet. So to start, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, that on May 1st, the P&Z Commission did hold a public hearing and considered this conditional use permit for a storage yard at 713 Cahill. And at that meeting, it was the decision of the commission to postpone. There were some requests for additional information regarding the road standards as they relate to Cahill Lane, access options to the property from the Sterling Highway and from Cahill Lane, and development options on the parcel. So with that, what I want to do is briefly go through some of the basics of the project as we discussed last time for the benefit of the commission and anybody attending and listening. The applicant is here today, Mr. Rutoff. The parcel that we're looking at is about 7.5 acres in size. It's commercially zoned. It's currently undeveloped. The land to the north of it is zoned rural residential and has a number of single-family dwellings as well as undeveloped properties. Access to this parcel is currently gained via Cahill Lane. The specific use that's being proposed is a storage yard, and storage yards are listed in Soldotna Municipal Code as being a conditional use. And within that code, it states that storage yards have to be site obscured from any street with dense evergreens or decorative fence or wall not less than 8 feet in height. There were no parking requirements due to the nature of the use that were required. Landscaping, as we had talked about quite a bit, landscaping is required, and in this case, buffer landscaping is required, and that involves a 15-foot wide buffer of 2 rows of trees or a 10-foot landscape buffer with 1 row of trees and decorative fence. There are 8 specific standards that you have to review and determine are met before the conditional use permit can be approved. And I'm not going to go through those now. Instead, what I'd like to do is briefly run through the memo that I provided you and go through that first, and then go back to the standards. So let's start with the memo. Find it? There we go. So we did meet with Director or Public Works Director Kyle Cornelis, Manager, Utility Manager, or I should say Roads Manager Scott Sundberg, to review the commission's requests and provide some feedback and detail to the information that you were requesting. So the first item that I've got on the memo is Cahill Lane standards. And in our city code, we do provide a list of maintained streets. So the first thing that we wanted to do is provide you with information that Cahill Lane is currently not included on the list. And that's despite the fact that our roads crew does in fact provide maintenance on that road. So that's something that needs to be addressed in the future. A formal decision needs to be made, and either it needs to be adopted into code because we're doing it already, or we need to make a decision that maintenance shouldn't be done on that road. But I did want to provide you with that basic information of how it's listed currently. Cahill Road is a local road. It's currently not constructed to the minimum city street standards. The primary function of a local road is to provide access to individual properties along the roadway. They are typically narrow, slow speed, and low volume facilities. The recommended lane width for local roads is 12 feet. They typically carry 150 vehicles or less per day. Currently, the lane width is approximately 10 feet on Cahill. Our roads manager indicates that drainage is poor and most of the road lacks ditches. Our Soldotna Streets Inventory and Management Plan from 2016 did evaluate Cahill Road and rated it as a 2 or very poor. When we looked at gravel roads in that management plan, they're rated from 5, which are newly constructed, to 1. And again, this one vote rated a 2. The rating does consider the road's crown, drainage, gravel layer, surface deformation, and defects. Right now, it's listed as a low priority for long-term capital improvement projects. Both Kyle and Scott recommended that if significant traffic is added to this street, that we would want to bring that road up to city standards. It would then be eligible for inclusion in the code as a regular maintained street and would be better suited to accommodating the increased traffic volume. Kyle was not able to provide an estimate for the cost of bringing that road up to city standards. He basically said without investigating existing conditions, he couldn't do that. Work necessary to determine the required upgrades and a cost estimate could include geotechnical test holes and engineering analysis of the road, a drainage assessment, and an as-built survey. With regard to access, as we discussed at our last meeting, the parcel in question does have a number of right-of-ways that abut it, including the Sterling Highway, Mackey Lake Road, Heath Street, and Cahill Lane. We talked about how DOT is reluctant to provide access off the Sterling Highway when other options are available, and due to safety concerns that we presently have there. It's also unlikely that Mackey Lake Road would ever be available due to its steep topography and also due to the safety concerns of this road of Mackey Lake coming down a hill and abutting essentially this Sterling Highway in the same area where an access road would have to be placed. Heath Street abuts the property to the north and west. It's currently not on the city's maintenance list, and it's really just an undeveloped right-of-way with the exception of some driveways. Only a portion of the Heath Street right-of-way has been dedicated, so there's really only 30 feet of Heath Street right-of-way that's been dedicated, and typically our roads are 60 feet in width, or our right-of-ways are 60 feet in width. So that, in our estimation, then leaves Cahill as the most logical and safe way to access Cahill Lane and this property. With regard to development options, as I mentioned, this property is zoned commercial. It does abut Sterling Highway and Mackey Lake Road. You're familiar with many of the uses and development opportunities that currently exist under the commercial district. There are 28 principal uses and 13 conditional uses that could be constructed under or within the commercial zoning district. So there's a number of potential uses that could go in here in addition to a storage facility. Not all of them require a conditional use permit. As noted in the commission's packet materials, neighboring land uses along Cahill and Heath are residential in nature. Those uses are zoned rural residential, and this does present the problem of a commercially zoned parcel abutting residential uses and sharing with them the only practical access route. And in this, I just want to call your attention to, I think this directly relates to standard number 2, and I'm going to try to call them out as we go through them. Standard number 2, when you're approving a conditional use permit, is that the use is in harmony with the comprehensive plan and surrounding land uses. For continuing on development options, in its present undeveloped state, there's no traffic issues on that road that we are aware of. It's minimal in nature and provides the necessary access to the residences. If the commission does wish to allow for commercial development on this parcel, we do recommend a condition on the permit that would require improving the road to meet city standards. And this comes in from consultation with our public works director and our roads manager. And we would rely on those two departments to help determine the appropriate road functional class, whether it's a local road, a collector road, an arterial, and so on, and the appropriate construction standards. It was asked by the commission if the city council would be willing to participate in the funding of road improvements. And this is my speculation, and again, I did talk with the public works director about this, but based on our most recent development agreements and special assessment districts that have come forward and have come before the council, I don't know that they would be willing to speculate at this point on their level of interest in committing to such a project without knowing the scope, the costs, and the potential use on the property. The next item I have down here is buffer landscaping. We had a long conversation about buffer landscaping and what would be appropriate. As I mentioned, a 15-foot buffer landscape bed is required. And the application did call for a 15-foot buffer along all the property lines. What we learned from both the application and from the meeting is that as proposed, the lot would be cleared mainly to allow, as I understand it, for snow storage, so that the top area of the development could be used for the storage of different materials, vehicles, and whatnot, and then the snow would be pushed off the side and allowed to drain away from the site. And let's see here. One of the concerns that the commission had was that with the buffer being at the lower elevation along the property lines, that it wouldn't meet the intent of the code. And I do agree with the commission and suggest that the resolution's second listed condition of approval be amended to require buffer landscaping at the top of the slope rather than on the property lines, so that the area cleared for storage uses is buffered from neighboring uses. I do provide there for you the intent of the landscape code, and the final line is to provide attractive and functional separation and screening between uses. To meet this intent, staff recommends that the existing resolution and the conditions numbers 5 and 9 be eliminated, and the following new condition be included as an amendment. And that condition would be to ensure that snow storage and stormwater runoff are appropriately addressed and do not negatively impact neighboring uses and property, landscaping, and rights of way, and to ensure that this development does not detract from the visual character of the community. Clearing of existing vegetation below the top of the slope is prohibited. If this amendment is adopted, I do want to make it clear that it would take away from the applicant's area for developable space. It was, as I understand it, his intent to use the entire area up on the top for storage, and this would essentially require a portion of that parcel to be used for snow storage, at least for part of the year. So as a reminder, your standards, your 8 conditional use standards, do begin on page 18 of the packet. In making your decision, I encourage you to review those standards and to make your findings based on those standards. If you have any questions of me, I'd be happy to answer as we get to the Q&A portion after the public hearing is held. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. The public hearing is now reopened. Any member of the public who wishes to speak on this, please come forward and state your name.
No one's online. Did you want to talk about your public comment that you submitted in the packet?
My name is Savati Rutov. What else do you gotta say? What my address? 28598 Whale Tail, Sterling, Alaska. So, basically, from our last meeting, there was this concern of the biggest one was even if we clear out all the trees and the buffer won't really work because of the slopage. So I'm willing to work together and do a buffer on top of the hill. That way, there's more. Don't know how to word it, but that way everybody's happy and is protected from the street and looks better. When people are entering Soldotna. I just stopped by. The road seems pretty good road, personally, and in the wintertime, there's almost going to be no traffic because people usually park their stuff and they just leave it till spring. A boat, RV, or whatever. Traffic will probably be minimal. So that's my comment. Well, I just I don't know how you guys I guess measure roads, but from end to end, it was 24 feet. But I guess you guys probably don't include the shoulder or the edges.
Yeah, Commissioner Anderson here. Could you just talk about the signage that you were gonna hang up or put in front, just some more detail on what it was gonna look like? The first thing I read was like a 20 foot by 4 foot, like a park and sell type sign, like a flimsy, what's gonna be visible from the road when people are driving by? I guess I was just curious.
So my idea was there's actually already on the corner of the property, on the hill, there's already two posts or sonotubes. There was a sign there before. So I was gonna use that one and just do some sort of a, just storage and with the phone number. And then I was also thinking to do like a banner, on the fence, horizontally, RV boat storage, phone number, basically. That's the plan. But not really sure if I'm gonna do that sign or not on the fence, but I'm gonna have the main one on the corner of the property where there's actually an existing post there. I'm just gonna reuse that.
Okay, yeah, I guess I would just say I don't have the sign code in front of me or anything along those lines, but maybe just a comment that it used to be our welcome to Soldotna sign, which is why those posts were there, and I've been here for 40 years, so I don't know. Try to make a nice sign if you can, to the best of your ability, to replace a sign that I used to look at all the time, so.
I guess I'm curious, does anyone know how the welcome to Soldotna sign was on private property?
Through the chair, I don't believe it was. It was within the right of way, and we had an encroachment permit.
So it wouldn't actually be available for him to use?
If in fact, I'm not sure if we're talking about the same foundation. We may be talking about different things. I believe the Soldotna sign was on wooden piles.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a different sign. You can't really see. It's actually kind of quite inside, so it's not gonna be like really visible. Most people think maybe my property goes all the way to the road, but it actually starts quite far inside because of the DOT right away. So it'll be like further in the hill, so it's not right in your face in the corner of Mackey.
Hearing none, the public meeting is closed, the public hearing is closed. Commissioners, any questions of staff or? John, you said about amendments, but I don't seem to find that in my packet.
So the recommended amendments are within the memo beginning on page 11 of your packet. And let's see here. So the first one actually is on page 12, where I recommend in the memo towards the bottom of page 12, development options. If the commission wishes to allow for the proposed commercial development on this parcel, staff recommends a condition on the permit that requires improving the road to meet city standards. So, and I'll explain a little bit more on this, again, in talking with our utility, our public works manager. Typically, when we have developments go in and we have substandard roads, the developer usually is improving the roads, the utilities, whether they're sewer and water or whatnot, to provide for the development. An example is the Walgreens development. Obviously, that's of a different scale, but they did put in multiple roads as well as a signalization there for Mullen Street. So what this condition would do, or recommendation would do, would be to essentially place the burden of the road improvements on the applicant, but it would not preclude the applicant from working with the city to determine the city's level of interest in participating in the improvement of that road. What, certainly what we can't guarantee is that the city's going to participate. The other thing is, it's really a decision, based on the type of use and whether you feel that that road that currently exists can handle that level of traffic that might be created there. I certainly will note that Mr. Rutov's proposed use is a conditional use. And so he or someone else could certainly apply for a principally permitted use and put in a Burger King, for example. That does not require a conditional use permit. And it could go in there just as well. So I just want you to be aware of, it's, for me, it's a chicken and egg thing as far as the road goes. It's unfortunate at this point that it's not brought up to city standards, and at some point it should. The question is, do we improve it first and wait for development to follow, or do we involve the developer as part of the mix when it comes to improving that facility, and what is that appropriate mix? So that's the first condition that I recommended, or modification. And the second one is on the following page. Under buffer landscaping, the second paragraph states, staff agrees with the commission and suggests that the resolution's second listed condition of approval be amended to require buffer landscaping at the top of the slope so that the area cleared for storage uses is buffered from neighboring uses. And if you do that, then it continues on after the quote, and it reads, to meet the intent of the buffer landscaping code, staff recommends that the existing resolution conditions number 5 and 9 be eliminated and a new condition be included as an amendment. And then it's stated there to ensure, this would be the amendment, suggested amendment, to ensure that snow storage and stormwater runoff, clearing of existing vegetation below the top of the slope is prohibited. So that too, I want to point out that, this is an opportunity actually at this point to potentially preserve some vegetation. Again, as I noted with the type of development that goes in there, there isn't any standards with regard to the city's code that prohibits Mr. Rutov at this point from going in there and clear cutting that parcel. It's allowed under our commercial district. If it was zoned residential, it would be a different situation, and he would have to leave a % of the vegetation standing. So those are some of the considerations that I thought about when I was drafting this, and those are the 3 conditions that I thought I should share with you for your consideration, and what you do with them certainly is up to you. But I'd be happy to speak to them more if you do have questions.
Okay, just to clarify, John, basically you're saying that prior to approving this, or part of the conditions of approving it is that the applicant would be required to make improvements in the road up to the city standards. Is that an accurate statement of what you said?
It is. So I would, if you do decide that that's a condition that you do apply to this permit, then I would leave it vague to the point that the road has to be brought up to standards, but not necessarily who has to do it. The developer can work with the city and do it independently, or perhaps some other option. I would leave that.
Okay, I see the wordsmith there. Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson here. How much do the roads need to be brought up, John? What are we talking? Like sidewalks and pavement, or like what exactly?
That's a very good question. It really depends on the class of road and what we want to see there. Right now, it doesn't meet any of our standards for even our lowest level road, which is a local road. So it would need improvements for that. And again, the basis for calling it a local road is based on the volume of traffic that it can handle. And so that volume of traffic should match the type of uses that we allow along that road. So that's something, again, that we have to think of as planners, as commissioners. Will the use that we allow exceed that amount? Was it suitable for that amount? If we think that we want a higher intensity use in there, then maybe we need a different class of road, which would require probably, a more expensive road with shoulders and proper drainage and perhaps even a sidewalk. But based on location out there, I doubt that things like sidewalks, bike lanes would be included. It's fairly rural at this point, but the whole question of the size of the road is a good one.
And would that include pavement by default, or could it still be dirt at the lowest level of acceptable standards for the city?
The city has been trying to get away from gravel due to the long-term maintenance costs, and I would anticipate that our Public Works director would want to see pavement. That would be my guess. I can't say that for certain, though. It really depends on the level of traffic. Right now, a gravel road serves that area just fine.
And currently it's a shall in here. Is that what I read?
Say what?
It's a shall. He shall do this, or somebody shall do it to bring it up to, it's not a should, it's a shall.
Correct. So, right.
And is it shall to the extent of their use or their property, or is it the length of the road?
If my recommendation that it would be to their access point.
Okay, there it jumps.
Which is also very close to the end of the road.
It looks like this is addressed, but I guess it seems confusing that aren't all of our parking lots in the city, in the commercial district supposed to be paved? So this is showing that paving is not required for this whole, basically essentially parking lot.
That's correct. There are exceptions for paving, and this is one of them. It does come off an unpaved road. In addition, one of the interesting exceptions for paving is car dealerships don't have to pave their lots. We were lucky when Kendall moved in that they did pave most of theirs. So again, one of the exceptions are sales displays and storage, are exempt. And you might remember that, I don't think what the permit was. But, yeah, at this point, no, it's not required. As I mentioned, they do also come off an unpaved road where our code says even commercial uses, if they come off an unpaved road, don't have to be paved.
Okay, not even minimally for the customers,
No, it would
just
have
no, no paid parking required at all. Okay.
parking's required, of course, but the parking doesn't have to be paved. I'm trying to think of an example. If we have, you think of any, Jen, recent ones, commercial development on unpaved surfaces? Well, St. Elias. Well, no, they did pave, didn't they? Yep, they did. Yeah. Well, sorry, I digress.
Friendly reminders, everybody turn on their microphones. Some people are having a hard time online hearing.
Yeah. Further questions of staff, commissioner comments?
Commissioner Burton here, just two clarifying questions. If Mr. Rutoff was required to improve the road to meet city standards, and here's question one. If after figuring out how much that would cost, the city decided did not want to invest in that, the onus would be on Mr. Rutoff to pay for that?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. And then question two, and I just want to make sure I heard correctly, the length that would be required to bring Cahill Lane up to city standards, is that just the entrance or basically the workable entrance to that property, or are we talking about the majority of Cahill Lane?
Cahill Lane, basically, the majority of Cahill Lane would be improved under this this recommended condition, because the access point currently to this property is at the end of Cahill Lane.
Okay, thank you. And I think I was just to clarify, if the city did not decide to invest in this and Mr. Rutoff pressed forward and wanted to fund that, would he be required to bring the entirety of Cahill Lane up to code?
I can't specify, I can tell you what my recommendation would be, and that would be the portion of Cahill Road that extends to his primary access would be the piece that I would recommend be improved, but nothing beyond that.
Okay, yes, thank you. That clarifies it. Thank you.
Commissioner Murray, so the designation we spoke about arterial, so the road improvement we're talking about is to bring Cahill Lane up to the local road standards, so that we're specific as to what requirements there are, or how is that worded?
I think it could be worded as such to the local standards. Again, I think what that does is it will set the bar for future development as far as what may develop in the future. So, for example, if Mr. Rutoff does decide in the future to develop multifamily homes in that area, as he's indicated, certainly we would look at the number of homes and the number of vehicle trips that would be generated from that kind of activity. And, does the local road standard at 150 vehicles per day, does it handle it? And if it does, that would be, I think, a recommendation that we would make to you and say, yes, that road can handle it. If Mr. Rutoff is thinking of 300 homes in that area, a local road certainly would not facilitate or handle the kind of traffic that would be generated out of there. And we would probably recommend a similar condition where the road be brought up to standards of a higher level of improvements.
Do we have other commercial areas that are being served by local roads? Just so that we can get an idea, because I can't think of any where we
I-
don't have a commercial style road going to our commercial district.
I believe we do. I mentioned, let's see if I can find it. I did mention Sharkathmai and St. Elias, and I'm going to see if, in fact, that is a local road. For unknown reasons, there's Sharkathmai. It is listed. Sharkathmai is listed as a portion of it. The portion up to St. Elias is listed as a neighborhood collector, and the rest of it is a local road.
Okay.
See if there's any other ones.
That one was recently upgraded though, right?
It was,
To all
yes.
standards.
Correct, yep. 47th Street and Homestead are local roads currently. So that's our Kenai River Brewery, or Lucy's, and the bookstore.
So local road, I don't know how it's defined. I guess I was assuming it was small and gravel, like Cahill. But those are paved, finished roads with curbs, et cetera.
They can be. There's a lot of variation in the standards. Typically, the classes call for not necessarily the surface, but the type of surface, but the lane width is what, in the drainage, for example, is what's called for. And I'm trying to page through this and see if I can find it for you. But I'm not. I'll keep paging, and if there's additional questions, please feel free to ask.
Okay, we have the resolution before us, the existing language in our packet. Any commissioner wish to make amendments to the motion before us?
One more question, I guess, comment. On the off-street parking and loading section on page 3. Under paving, the reason we gave that he doesn't need to pave the parking area is because Cahill Lane isn't paved. So I guess, wanted to bring it up that if he were to have it paved, or it was to be paved, or somebody was to pave it, would he then be required to pave the parking lot? If we take away the reason it's not required, what then? I guess. Does that matter? Is that even worth discussing?
No, I think that is worth discussing. I think that's a good question, a good point. One that I hadn't considered. And if the road were to be developed first, then yes, his development would have to be paved. Yes.
We had a similar instance on Karen Street. I believe it was last year, 2 years ago. You approved a storage yard for Legacy Electric, and you did not require paving, just like the apron was, but all of this remained gravel.
Yeah, I remember that. Because his intent is, this is somewhat temporary, and then he wants to go into residential, is my understanding. I would be for that, and I think that if he were to pave it, it would probably make it less likely that it would ever become anything else. Is my logical thought. And then earlier, John, I apologize, but you were discussing, I'm pretty sure, do we have the ability to recommend or put into action that he doesn't have to pave this? Or we can take it out of there and make that shall go away if we so choose, discuss it and come up with that? Did I understand correctly?
You can, certainly the commission can make findings, you know, that, that at this point, because of the potential future development, that wouldn't make financial, economic sense to pave at this point, and therefore, paving is not required. If should Cahill be improved and it be paved, then yes, you can make that finding and that condition.
It seems like if Cahill were improved and paved, then maybe the parking for customers who are coming to the office to engage in getting a rental spot, maybe that would have to be paved, but the rest of the yard would be under the other criteria that you mentioned of storage yards not having to be, like the yard itself not have to be paved.
Sure. Again, at the discretion of the commission, you can make
Okay.
findings to that end. And
Okay.
yes.
So do we need to come up with the verbiage to agree with the recommendations that you made to make the changes to the conditional?
Only those that
Conditions?
you agree
If
with.
if we agree with, if we agree with them,
Yes.
then we need to move to amend
Yeah.
2 and
and
5, is it?
So again, I provided some very rough language in my memo to you, so you might, if it's close at all, you can feel free to work off of that and modify as necessary, or start from scratch and do whatever you feel is, whatever.
Which page?
feels
Where is the
appropriate.
memo? I can't find it in this. I was only seeing it up
Oh,
here. I never found it in the packet.
Really? Okay, let's take a peek here.
But I also think I have a draft packet that I'm looking at. I don't know.
I think I have you logged in as me. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Page, it starts on page
3?
11 of your packet,
Oh, sorry.
of the total packet.
PDF 11.
So it comes right after the resolution.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes. got it.
Commissioner Burton here. Before we move into discussion of amendments, I am curious. I know I missed my opportunity to question the public, so I'm just curious with the use of this particular parcel. I know that we're talking about boat, automotive, RV storage, and there is a potential desire for residential development in the future. And I was wondering if it was possible to ask Mr. Rutoff or uh, get a little clarity on what that means in terms of timeline, if there is a timeline. Because I think that's something that probably interests all of us and is very important to the city. And would be interesting to know if there are solid plans for that in the future.
Mr. Rutoff, would you want to respond to the question?
Basically, what my plan is now, I didn't want to lose the opportunity on this piece of property. And I'm mainly a apartment and residential developer. So that's my, 3 years plan. And the reason why I want to do a conditional use permit for storage and just have a gravel pad for now is just not to have that investment not get me any returns, Right now, it's, an expensive piece of property. I purchased it, I'd prefer to do something on it so it generates a little bit of cash flow and pays for itself while I'm ready to develop it. I got a couple other pieces of property I'm developing right now. So once those are done, then I would want to move, within 3 to 5 years onto that one. But that's basically my plan with the storage, is just so it's not, bleeding money from me.
Thank you, Mr. Rutoff. That makes absolute sense, and I think that is that kind of development would be very much appreciated by the city. As I said before, housing is an issue here, so I think that is a solid plan. Thank you for responding.
And I just want to make a comment. I'm not sure if I'll have to or not, but if you guys make the decision of me updating Cahill Lane, this development will not happen because it's not financially feasible. So just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Okay, back to the commission. Are there any amendments to the motion as before us? The chair would make an amendment to the portion on landscaping to change that not to the property line, but to the bench above the property line. I forget, John, how did you word that?
Thank you. And let's see here if I can find where I did that. So I've got some sample language on page 13. I think it's page 13.
I can never find the stuff.
Oh, okay.
Can't find it.
So,
I'm sorry. I
Can't find it anyway.
Okay.
The numbers don't match.
okay.
There.
In the memo, on the third page of the memo, there is a section on buffer landscaping, and the second to last paragraph is a draft concept for a condition, and it states, to ensure that snow storage and stormwater runoff are appropriately addressed and do not negatively impact neighboring uses and property, landscaping, and rights of way, and to ensure that this development does not detract from the visual character of the community, clearing of existing vegetation below the top of the slope is prohibited.
That would be my motion. My amendment. Is there a second?
Mr.
I
Chair,
second.
Amendment's been moved in second. Could the motion planner?
Question, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I have a question for Mr. Rutoff. At the very end of your last talk, you said you would not be able to afford this to bring the street up to code. Were you talking about bringing it up to a local standard or the paving part? Right. Okay, so to even widen the gravel road. All right, thank you.
Okay. You want to
Yeah.
read back the amendment that's before us?
All right. So in John's memo, it says to eliminate conditions number 5 and number 9, and then add on a new condition. And did you want to do the elimination too of those 5 and 9, or do you want to keep 5
Yes,
and 9? Okay.
yes.
So the motion to amend to remove conditions number 5 and number 9 from the resolution, and to add into the condition to ensure that snow storage and stormwater runoff are appropriately addressed and do not negatively impact neighboring uses and property, landscaping, and rights of way, and to ensure that this development does not detract from the visual character of the community. Clearing of existing vegetation below the top of the slope is prohibited. Shall I call the vote, or is there more comments?
Any further, Commissioner? Hearing none, vote on the amendment.
Commissioner Burton,
Yes.
Commissioner Totfest,
Yes.
Commissioner Murray,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Turner,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith-O'Galey.
Yes.
Motion passed to amend.
So, the sticking point is obviously bringing the road up to local standards. Between the meetings, I went out and looked at the road. I think if I remember correctly, there are, 3 or 4 houses on this road currently. And then there's another road that goes, there's a T, and there's another road that goes up another 300 yards or something, and there's 2 more houses. So a total of 6 houses on the accessing the road on a arguably daily basis. And if each of those people had 2 cars, you might get to 30 trips, 40 trips at the most. I understand the issue of not wanting to, to create a lot more traffic. As Mr. Rutoff said, it's going to be seasonal. It's going to happen a lot in June and a lot in August and September, and then it's going to be pretty dormant for the most part. For those of you who weren't here at our last meeting, the 2 residents in the area were, if I'm characterizing their comments correctly, were saying, we'd like to help, but we're concerned about the road, and that's legitimate. It just seems to me that, from my perspective, that requiring the road come up to local standards is burdensome, given the issue that it's commercial property, and it can be developed under a conditional use permit for the intended use. It just seems like we're making it overly burdensome to the developer to do. So unless someone else wants to make the amendment to require the local road that we can vote on, that's where I'm at. So.
I do have a question for staff regarding that. In 2 to 3 years, when he wants to develop this to single family or multifamily housing, will there be then the requirement to bring the road up to some standard? Otherwise, if we say do it now without, and his intent is to make homes there on the nice view area, and then that never happens because the road won't support his actual intent.
No, not necessarily. So within the commercial, within the commercial district, as you know, housing is permitted. It will require a conditional use permit. So that would be the opportunity to require an improvement to the road and bring it up to standards. So that would be an opportunity at that point. But it's not, again, depending on the use, if he did something that didn't require a conditional use permit, it wouldn't require, there would be nobody to make the requirement that the road be brought up to that level of standard.
Okay.
Any other amendments to the motion as proposed?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I do not have well, maybe I do have an amendment, but I want to share with you that in my memo, I am now realizing that you eliminated numbers 5 and 9 as part of your amendment, and I should have also included condition number 2. If you look at your resolution, the second condition is a buffer landscape bed shall be installed along all property lines. The landscape bed shall be, so that is something that we just adjusted by putting the landscaping up at the top of the slope. And so I would request that the commission further amend the resolution by eliminating the second condition in the resolution.
With approval of my second, can we put that before the group? Okay, so we're further amending the amendment concerning the location of the buffer zone. Any commissioner comments or questions? Hearing none, please call for the vote.
Commissioner Burton,
Yes.
Commissioner Topaz,
Yes.
Commissioner Turner,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
I'm sorry, what are we doing right now? I got confused. There was too much going on too quick. Number 2
Delete.
is going to be up for discussion. We're voting
No,
on
no,
discussing it.
To
To
eliminate,
eliminate it.
because it doesn't apply now that we've amended
Okay,
the motion.
yes, would be my vote.
Commissioner Smith-O'Kaylee,
Yes.
and Commissioner Murray.
Yes.
Motion to further amend passed.
Trying to read at the same time.
Yeah, I actually don't see number 9, which we said we were eliminating.
Down.
Oh, okay.
So that was it right there. Those 1 to 9.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Fine.
Yeah,
And
okay.
2 we just do.
Okay.
We get any further amendments from the commission?
Commissioner Anderson, just a clarification to make sure where we're at on everything right now is the shall requirement of paving the road or updating the road or bringing it up to local standards, is that still involved in all this? Or are we just talking about landscaping and storm water and things of that nature?
Currently, the motion before us does not include anything with regard to improvement of Cahill Lane.
Okay. So there would still need to be an amendment to discuss
If he
that.
would like to propose it.
Okay, so I would like to propose an amendment to discuss that well, if I do that, does that standard then not apply once he becomes residential, if he does decide to do that? If he doesn't have to do it for this, and then he wants to do residential later, like I think Jenny was asking about, right? You had said with the conditional might bring it before us again, so then at that time we can discuss it.
That's correct. So
Okay.
if Mr. Rutoff were to propose residential development in the commercial district, it would require a conditional use permit, so it would be back before you at that time.
So we can do this now and know that that can still be discussed later. So then I would like to propose that amendment.
Or you can, if you don't do it now, it will come before you. It depends on your feelings as a commissioner, whether you want the road brought up to standard now or later. If it's later, then you don't have to do anything because it'll come back to you.
Oh, okay. That's what I want.
Okay.
I want it to be easier for him to develop this now. But when it comes time for residential, I want to be able to discuss it again. So if I don't need to make an amendment for that, then
Correct.
that's what I want.
However, if at that point, we then say the road needs to be brought up, then it may become prohibitive for him ever to it not be a storage yard. I guess if we're not treating all things alike, like that we should have a good solid road for whatever development there is.
Yeah, you could make a case that you don't need to.
Right.
That's what you're saying.
I guess I just am saying like either it should be brought up or not, and maybe we should do it now or
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't want to prohibit maybe better use later on of residential. That makes sense.
So Tom, do you have the language that you'd like to amend the resolution?
I do not. Um, I think I'm good with what John had said. I think no amendments at this time for me.
Yeah, just a clarification to John. If we don't have any further amendments and this motion were to pass, then the conditions that we've set with the amendment to change where the buffer occurs for snow storage, et cetera, the developer is able to use the existing road to access his property for purposes of a storage yard. If conversely, if we feel that that's not going to work for the area and for the community, then we would add an amendment that said that prior to the development, the Cahill Lane must come up to local road standards for the city's requirements. And so that, and John purposely said that that would give the developer the opportunity to work with the city to see how that might be managed, but it would delay substantially the developer's ability to move forward with his project at this point. Either way, even if we deny the conditional use, the developer has the opportunity to work with the city, but doesn't have any leverage, if you will, because we you know, but again, my feeling is that all of the safety concerns around this commercial property, which we've zoned commercial, is so limited because of the Sterling Highway and our desire for safety there, that also Mackey Lake Road, that it just, there's no access point there. And as we talked earlier tonight, Mackey Lake is still a difficult place. We're going to add to that, arguably. But it just seems to me that, my opinion as commissioner, that we want to encourage people to utilize the land that they have. And if it's zoned commercial, therefore, I would acknowledge that there is going to be increased traffic, that the road, that it will be less residential. But of course, the residents there should have known that they had a commercial piece of property in front of them. When they bought their property, it's always a chicken and an egg kind of thing. Who's first and who has access. It just seems to me we would preclude the development if we required the developer to upgrade the road. If we left it vague, as John spoke, the developer at least would be able to go to work with the city to see if there was any mitigation of how to get that up to local standards and prior to the development. But it's definitely going to slow down the development. And again, just visually, when I looked there, not perfect, as our maintenance people have said, our public works director, it's our road, but it's not maintained to our standards. Could we then move to make our road up to standards? Well, we could. We'd have to prioritize. It'd have to get on the list. It'd have to make it through the process. But in the meantime, the developer would have the ability to create a storage yard and, we'd go from there. So enough of me. Anyone want to make an amendment on a local road requirement?
Would we be able to do something like that the road would need to come up to local standards within 2 years of the opening of his business?
Yeah, well, I
Or-
think that just.
I think the city should participate in, if we have a commercial area that is not accessible.
But then he's made an investment, Jenny, and if
Mhm.
we say no,
If the city says
says
no, then
no,
it's on
then-
him,
then
true,
he's-
yeah.
he's now invested money.
Mhm,
He has negative cash flow.
mhm. So what would be helpful to get the city to participate?
Well, I think
Well, I know
I
it's
think
gonna
it's
be
in the
money.
city's interest, but
Mhm.
we have to be advocates with our council, Dan's here,
Mhm.
to say, does the city want development? how do we help developers move past some of the obstacles they face? Unless we simply don't think a storage yard is valuable. I mean, I'm amazed, the storage yard out at Sterling, right there at the highway. Initially there were like two trailers there. Today, I don't think there's a space. Plus he built some storage units, So obviously it's an area in our community, as we well know. Storage facilities pop up left and right in the borough, et cetera. They're a growth industry. People want them for whatever reason. So, anyone wish to make an amendment? Hearing none. Hearing none, the chair would call for a vote on the resolution as amended.
All right.
PZ 2024-009.
As amended, vote Gary Turner,
Yes.
Dennis Murray,
Yes.
Jenny Smithwick Ailey,
Yes.
Mark Burton,
Yes.
Charlene Topfest,
Yes.
and Thomas Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Is it number 10? 30.
PC resolution 2024-010, resolution concerning mobile health park.
So moved.
Second.
Second,
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I'll start with the staff report, and then I will turn it over to Councilmember Chilson, who is sponsoring this ordinance that's before you. The city code currently does have a section on mobile home parks, and that is provided in your packet. You'll see that we have some general design standards that cover everything from parking to internal streets to the anchoring of structures. There's also a section on relationship to surrounding land uses. So if a mobile home park were to be developed, it would require screening landscaping. And there's a section, I should say, a new section on public health and safety standards that Mr. Chilson is recommending. And basically what this does is it states that within 300 feet, if a mobile home park is within 300 feet of city services, they need to connect to our city sewer and water. If they aren't, then they do have to furnish the city of Soldotna with a copy of any permit or authorization issued by the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation. So that's true for both sewer and water. Let's see. There is a section here too that it states that if this section is violated with regard to the provision of sewer and water services, that if the section is violated and prior to curing the violation, a mobile home park tenant or dweller does not receive water or sewer service, the mobile home park owner shall be considered to have willfully diminished the tenant's water or sewer service. And what that does, as I understand it, is it provides the ability for the state to more effectively administer its code and provide for enforcement action. The other important thing that is proposed in this ordinance or resolution as you're reviewing it is a change in notice. So currently, state law requires that that if a landowner would like to close or vacate their premises, they have to give 270 days notice to all of the tenants. And what this does is it doubles that requirement to 540 days. So it goes from 9 months to 18 months. Those are the basics, and I think Mr. Chilson has provided you a memo with more detail, including some bullet points under the memo, which I think are very helpful and reaffirms or restates some of the things that I went over. But at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Chilson so he can share with you some of the reasons behind this ordinance and add any other comments he would care to. Mr. Chilson.
Do we need?
Hello, can you hear me at all?
He's providing essentially staff.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
It's his ordinance, not administration's. Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, can you hear?
Pardon me,
Oh,
Mr. Chilton, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. I'm trying to make my audio system here while I'm out mobile. Yes, as Mr. Zarneski had said, this ordinance is really targeting two key areas, and the first being health and public safety for those that reside within our mobile home parks, and just doing what we can to ensure that all residents of those parks have access to clean and reliable water and sewer services. The intent being that any park that was within proximity to our city utilities would be required to hook up to those. I believe we actually have code that requires that right now. This further expands on that by requiring that any additional homes that would be placed on that lot also be connected to that grid. And fines associated with it of just establishing
You're breaking
the
up.
requirement code.
Transmission is good.
And that is a tool that the state would then have to further enforce their standards for those.
Councilman, you're not.
Apologize, I'm trying to get closer to the outside here. Very limited data where I am. Fine approach. It's more of just we are requiring this be per second. I'm gonna disconnect and call back in, and you'll see me connect here in again about 30 seconds.
Okay, we'll hold for you to call back in.
I can also call him directly if we have his cell phone. I don't know if either of you have his cell phone.
That might be actually easier if you don't mind calling me.
Mayor Whitney, do you have Jordan's cell phone?
It's gonna take me a little bit to get this for you.
Just one moment. I'm going to have to try and find your cell phone number. It's online. It's just going to take me to log in real quick.
Hello.
Hi, Jordan. We can hear you now through the Exxon.
I can hear you too. Is the audio quality better now? Can you hear me any better?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So thank you for your patience and bearing with me on this. So starting over, the code that I'm proposing here focuses on areas. first being health and public safety for those who live in our mobile home parks, and really trying to ensure that they have access to functional and clean water and sewer services. And there's two ways that we can go about that. They can either be served via city utilities or on-prem water and sewer. Now, for parks that are within vicinity of existing utilities, I believe we have code that requires that the park is established. If it's within that vicinity, they have to connect those utilities. But I think it's currently ambiguous as far as if there's further expansion later. And this code would expand our code to require additional units placed on that property to then be hooked up if that park is grown. Additionally, for parks that are established that exceed the proximity requirements to water and sewer services on the city, they've historically been permitted to establish on-site water and sewer that is managed by the property owner. Those services are regulated by Alaska Department of Conservation. Their enforcement of that has historically been weak at best. So what this code would do is establish the ability for this to be a required set of standards at a municipal level as well. And again, the goal of this is not that the city of Soldotna becomes a local version of Alaska DEC and starts enforcing water and sewer standards, but really it's an additional tool that we have available to us if we chose to intercede in egregious situations, or more likely it gives the tenants of that property the ability for them to pursue civil action and use our code as justification for their own civil cases if they wanted to. Secondly, notification periods, as John had mentioned. Current state statute requires that tenants of mobile home parks, if the park were to be closed, are to be given a minimum of 270 days notice, essentially 9 months if the park is to close. We have heard from people that live in a park being closed that presents a pretty difficult barrier for them depending on the timing of that notification, especially if the notification is given right at the beginning of the fall. That 9-month period can land over the course of the winter, really removing any ability for them to coordinate moves during the summer months when really that's the only time you can do it. And summer season aside, just the duration of time itself can be difficult for them to either locate alternative housing or secure financing to pursue additional housing options. So this would be just an extension of that by an additional 9 months. I apologize. I'm remote right now and have very limited access to data and quality voice on this one, so I might be cutting in and out. So I would be happy to answer any questions, but if you lose me, I apologize.
Okay, thank you. Any commissioner questions of Councilman?
Yeah, Councilmember Jordan Chilson, this is Commissioner Turner. I have a question. Why double the amount of time for the notice? Why not go to 1 year, from 9 months to 1 year? That should get around what you were saying is deficit to the 9-month notice.
Thank you for the question. That's an excellent one. And I actually did kind of go back and forth on the time period on this for a little while. Yes, extending it from 9 months to 12 months would get around the seasonal barrier. But seasonal limitations aside, I think there's still an issue with just time to find alternative property, time to find alternative housing if they're not going to be moving the trailer itself. And then also there's, the reality that a lot of people that live in these parks are of very limited means, and they don't necessarily have a large safety cushion that they can draw from if large costs like having to find alternative housing comes up on them like this, and they might require a little bit more time to save or find some additional financial assistance. And I really do believe that the extra 9 months instead of the current 9-month period that it has could be key for the success of people finding housing in this situation.
Yeah.
And that would be, go ahead.
You have a follow-up then. When, let's say the trailer they're living in cannot be moved and basically it has to be destroyed or towed off, who's responsible for paying for that cost?
I don't have the answer for that.
That's a pretty important one to me.
I apologize. I don't have the answer for that one.
Yep. Commissioner Turner again. perhaps we could bring this back to the commission next month and you could find out how this works.
I think assume that it would be in the lease agreement between the property owner and the tenant. If they decide to leave and leave behind their trailer, they probably becomes the property. I mean, whether it's a benefit or
Right.
or not, it probably becomes the property of the landowner.
I would also add that whether or not the current time period as mandated by the state stays in effect, or if we were to adopt code that extends that mandatory notice period, that doesn't change. We're strictly modifying the notice period. The mechanics of how that work are unaltered.
Councilman Chilton, question about, just a landlord-tenant relationship. The tenant here is renting the property. Doesn't the tenant and the landlord have an agreement of some sort that says, I give this to you for an annualized lease? I don't know that there would be an 18-month lease or a 36-month lease. So how does your proposed change affect that landlord-tenant relationship, or do you know?
That's not something I have information on. What I know is that the state has statute that requires a 270-day notice period, and this is simply leaving the same mechanics of how that works in place and just extending the time period.
So what I think I'm hearing you say is irrespective, if there are no other conditions that have not been complied with, if the landlord, in this case, the owner, chooses to no longer rent to in other words, it's the whole park. It's not an individual unit, I would assume.
Correct. This doesn't affect individual evictions for cause. This is for situations in which a owner or operator knows that they want to close the entire park or repurpose it and need to evict all tenants on the property. That's a pretty major event. That, again, as I mentioned in my memo, this is not something that's a knee-jerk reaction by owners or operators. This is something that is a very considered decision that takes time, and I believe that they do see this coming. This is not something that they just, on a whim say, I'm going to close my park. I believe it's reasonable to make an assumption here that owners and operators of these parks, they know that the trend of the operation, and if it's going to be closing, it's something that they can forecast a ways out. And again, the leases, they can be more generous than the time requirement. If someone has a lease that exceeds the current 9-month or even the 18-month that this is proposing, it's just per state statute, you can't move someone out of the park for closure with less than 9 months notice, regardless of what lease you may have. And this would be extending that time period. That is all.
Thank you. Further follow-up, did you do any research of any other communities in Alaska and their particular take on this particular question? I mean, we have 3 mobile home parks. I guess I should also say, assume the commissioners know that all of the existing parks are grandfathered in. They're not affected
Correct.
by this proposed change, just so that we're clear. It's not existing. It's anyone who would propose a park, and then they would come under the statutory change.
So my understanding is that the notice requirements would apply to existing parks. What would be grandfathered in, and Director Zarneski might be able to correct me on this, my understanding is the grandfathering would mostly apply to the water and sewer services that are on site. So if we were to see additional parks brought into the city in any of the commercial lots or any other districts where they could potentially be established with maybe a conditional use permit, they would again be required to hook up to existing utilities if they're in proximity, or if they are outside of proximity of city utilities. With the current code, they would just be allowed to create on-site utilities, and we would just trust that they would be to state standards. Our code would now require new parks to actually adhere to those state standards and provide proof to the city that they do meet those standards. And if they fall out of compliance with those standards, the residents of those parks would have the means to go to civil court referencing our code as the justification for their case, or potentially the city if we felt that it was justified for us to get involved. But I don't foresee us really getting involved unless it was an extremely egregious case that felt like it was relevant to the city.
Again, just to clarify, so it's your position that the proposed change of the 540 days would apply to the existing mobile home parks?
Yes, I believe so. I can't speak to the one by the bridge because I believe that one is already closed or in the process of closing. There's a settlement with that, which we're not privy to the terms of. But we do have 2 additional parks. And the goal here would be that if those were to close, we want to see those close in a manner that is fair to the residents of those parks and give them adequate notice to find alternative housing or coordinate a reasonable move for their home.
Thank you for that clarification. Question for staff. I know, John, you indicated you'd had some conversation of this change with the attorney. Did the attorney agree with what Mr. Chilton?
Yes, in principle, as Mr. Chilson stated, that our existing mobile home parks will not be affected by this, by the requirements with regard to sewer and water. Though a new park would, or if an existing park were to expand and change in size. I don't recall the attorney's specific comments regarding the 540 day, the notice portion of this. But considering the fact that our existing code has no language with regard to it, there isn't anything to grandfather in that respect. And so, I would have to review my notes from the attorney or contact the attorney again regarding that. But I do believe Mr. Chilson is correct that the notice portion would apply to our existing parks, but not the other portions that deal with the water and sewer and the requirements to place or the requirements to provide proof.
It would be my sense that it would be a property taking, would it be not? If the owner, if they are in compliance with this current state law, they have to give the 270 days. If the city were to increase that to 540, would that not be in fact a property taking? I guess, John, that's not a question for you. I do think Gary's correct. We could postpone this till the next meeting and maybe have a couple of these questions resolved with respect to the proposed change.
I will add in that this is scheduled for introduction at the council's next meeting. So, and then I believe it's scheduled 2 weeks after that for the public hearing. So I would imagine that Mr. Chilson, if the commission decides to request a postponement to the next meeting for additional information, that he could also request a postponement for the public hearing on this item. But I do want to see what Mr. Chilson has to say and whether that's an option he'd be willing to consider.
Certainly. I hear you. I think those are valid questions. My recommendation would be at this point in time, going into this, I didn't anticipate this really having any reservations with the commission. I would say if any of the commissioners have reservations about this or additional information that they would like to see brought forward, I certainly support postponing this until we have all the information before us. And I would be happy to coordinate with our city clerk to either pull the introduction of this at a council level from our next council meeting, because the packet hasn't officially dropped. However, if it's too late to do that, then yes, I would make a motion in our next council meeting to postpone it accordingly. One request I would have for the commission is if they do make the decision tonight to postpone it, I would request respectfully that it be postponed not until the July meeting, but until the August meeting. I'm actually going to be out of town for the July Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. And if we could postpone it until August, that would give more time to seek the answers, the information that is sought, and then also give me the opportunity to come before you in person and speak to this more effectively, I think, than I'm able to right now via cell phone.
Well, thank you. That's very helpful. Is there any motion with regard to postponement, Mr. Turner?
Yes, I propose to table this until the August meeting.
Is there a second? Does that need a second tabling?
So we're not allowed to discuss anything else? We're just
Can we propose that? You want to withdraw for the moment? Yes, yes, we should have all the discussion we would like.
And point of order, if I may, I believe you need to postpone it. My understanding is with Robert's rules, tabling is just until the next meeting, so that would be until July. If you want to defer it until August, it would have to be a postponement motion.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Thank you.
Commissioner Smithwick, well, Ellie.
Yes. I would just say I really like this. Jordan, thank you for putting this together. I think that personally, if we are able to amend this without postponing it, I would recommend the 365 days extension instead of the 270, which would give someone the seasons, but not be so inhibitive to the property owner if they decide to make a change. The other thing that I would love to see, which I don't think I see in here, would be to add some of our landscaping requirements with the parking that comes with each unit. I've been to some really beautiful mobile home parks in other states, and growing up in Soldotna, I've never seen one here that looked beautiful. But a huge component in that is the landscaping. So I don't know if that's something that is this something we can amend a little bit before we send it to council rather than postponing?
If I may speak to that, I thank you for the feedback. Again, I'm not 100% set on the timeline for the notice period on this. I do firmly believe at least that it needs to be at 12 months so they at least overcome the seasonal barriers. I would love to see more. However, if it's an issue of this fails because no one supports the full doubling, but we would be supportive of 12 months, I would be happy to take that if that's where the commission is at. And if we were looking to support that at a 12-month duration tonight, I believe it is fully within the purview of the commission to amend the resolution to set the time period at 1 year rather than a doubling to a full year and a half. And if that were the case, we could carry forward with introduction to the council at the upcoming meeting. And I would be able to make a motion to amend the ordinance that I would be introducing at council down to 1 year to match the resolution that was recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then to your second point, if you feel strongly about adding additional landscaping, updates to the mobile home code, or any other language that we feel we should be adding while we're actually taking an in-depth look at our section of codes pertaining to mobile home parks, I would also be fully supportive of postponing this until our August meeting and giving time for us to really research that and bring forward additional options to the table to add. And again, I'd be happy to collaborate with any of our commissioners that are interested in doing that. So again, I appreciate all of your time on this, and these are all valid, really good ideas and questions that you have. So thank you.
Okay. Annie, would you like to make your motion, your amendment anyway? Any other comments from anyone?
Yeah, Commissioner Anderson here. I also think that 12 months or 365 days is a good thing beyond the 9 months just to get out of that seasonal. Yet 18 months, I believe, is if they're not going to get it together in 12 months, then they're probably not going to get it in 18, and it's going to hamper what the owner wants to do with his property. Secondly, on the water connections, I'm just keep reading it and I can't figure out the first number, C1. So on new text, it's saying mobile home parks shall have a privately maintained water distribution system with separate services lines to each mobile home and a single water service connection to the city of Soldotna. So that means you're tapping into the main water system, and then you have like a reservoir, if you will, or some kind of secondary distribution to each home. Is that correct? Is that not what's currently going on?
Correct. So right now, mobile home parks that are within proximity of city utilities, and again, Director Zarneski, feel free to jump in here and correct me at any point, but my understanding is that if the property, when the park is established, is within 300 feet of city utilities at any point along that property, then the property itself is required to tap into the utility grid. And then at that point, the property owner is basically responsible for building a distribution of that utility hookup that covers all of the mobile homes on the park. So we're not providing direct utility hookups with separate water meters to every home on that property. We're providing one single property hookup to the lot, and then the lot owner is responsible for providing some form of distribution on the property to all of the homes. And then if there are additional homes that are brought into that lot, code has previously been kind of nebulous on whether or not those would be required hookup, or if they would maybe be able to use on-site water and sewer services that they create themselves if that single unit were further than 300 feet away. This code modifies it to where if there are existing hookups anywhere on that property, you can't say I'm further than 300 feet away from city utilities and then put a well and septic on for that one additional unit that you add. No, you'll be required to add an extension of those utilities that you have all the other mobile homes in the lot to whatever mobile home you're adding. So they are also on city water sewer. But again, at the end of the day, it's a single hookup to the lot from the city water and sewer. And then the lot owner or operator is responsible for extending that to all units on the property.
Got it. That makes sense. So that way we are metering, and then also we're not having private wells within city limits and they're dodging paying utility fees while within the city
Correct.
limits. Is that, I mean, that sums it up.
Yeah, correct. And again, my understanding was that the property, if it was within 300 feet of city utilities, it would have been required to hook up when it was established. And let's say you add 10 mobile homes and you create the park, you get the single hookup to the lot and distribute to all 10 of them. Well, I think if 10 years later you decide you want to add an 11th mobile home on the opposite side of the lot that is 300 feet away from city utilities, I think our code is currently nebulous, and they might have been able to justify having an on-site sewer or well as the code is currently written. This revision would say, no, you already have water and sewer services on the lot. You have to extend those further and tie into any additional mobile homes you add to the lot.
Okay.
And then
then,
for expansions or new home parks where there's no city utilities within 300 feet of anywhere of the lot, they would be permitted to create on-site well and sewer services like they were before. But the big difference here is they're required to provide certification to the city that shows that they truly meet DEC standards. And then if they lapse in those adherence to those standards in the future, a tenant of that park could take the operator to court and in a civil case referencing our code. It's not necessarily us that would be suing them. However, we would technically have that ability if we felt it was justified.
do we need to line item or reference like fines, fees, things of that nature if it were to come to that? Or can we
Yeah,
just, can we
because-
say whatever the ADC already has in place? That's our same exact fines, fees per day per violation.
There's no fines or fees associated.
There's not, okay, so they could
There are-
discharge septic. And then there's
They
no,
have to adhere to DEC standards, but if they violate those DEC standards, there's not an SMC specified fine for that. It's just basically they are no longer compliant with our code, and at that point, our city administration would coordinate with them to bring them back into compliance. And if they failed to become compliant, there's not a fine. The next mediation would be civil court and a lawsuit, and that's not necessarily something that we as a city would have to pursue. But a tenant of the park could take the operator to court and reference our code as the justification for that civil lawsuit, and that would be the end all cure if it came to that. Again, that's not the intent of this, but that would be an option.
yeah, I understand that. I just kind of, I guess, was asking, is that something you would want to include in there, is referencing anything of that nature that the ADEC already has, we would adopt that in this exact same thing, or if you just want to leave it as is, yeah, lower level enforcement.
Sure. I'd be interested to hear the feedback from the commission on this. My personal take is I don't want the city of Soldotna to get in the business of enforcing water and sewer standards. I think it's sufficient for them to provide certification that they meet the state standards. So they, as part of establishing on-site well and water sewer service, I believe believe there's testing required with that, and that they get a final certification from the state that says, okay, yes, the state has reviewed this, this meets our standards, and it's just merely a matter of just providing a copy of that documentation to the city, and okay, you meet standards. And if they fall out of compliance with that, again, we're not going to be going out there and doing the testing ourselves or have specific state standards that we have adopted into our code. It's just we specifically say in the state that they must meet the certification for the state standards. And I think that's simple and meets our goal.
Thank you, Jordan.
Sure.
John, what do you think about landscaping? Because if we could do it now, that would seems simple as opposed to like, having to go visit our code. And I don't know, we must have a section on mobile home parks, or do we?
Right.
Okay, if there's landscaping in here, that's great. I did not see it.
Shall provide screening landscaping in accordance with
The
section
screening,
7.
yeah.
So
The buffer,
Except along
yes.
the boundary.
this is a section of code that when we initially reviewed this, I did not, I saw it there, didn't think much of it until tonight when the commission brought it up. And in your comments, I looked up 1310.335 or 1710.335 F4, and our code has been modified since then, and there no longer exists in F4. So I think it is a good idea for us to take a peek at the landscaping requirements, update the code reference, and make sure it applies to an appropriate section that deals with screening landscaping. And so we would share that with Councilman Chilson as far as, where we believe the appropriate section would be, and then it would come back to you with that modification.
Okay, yeah, just because, just seeing that we're adding the requirement of paving all of their parking areas, and then there's gonna be a 300 square foot common area, which I assume will be grass or something like that. But I think with all the parking that we're adding, just how we even do our parking lots now, that there should be like maybe a tree in the yard or 2 trees or something like that. But I don't know what recommendation to make, but I think the only other alternative would be for us to then have another special session on modifying our mobile home landscape or mobile home code. Seems easier to do it now, but.
Question if I made a staff, is the current landscaping requirements, do we have any actual landscaping requirements within the SMC section specific to mobile homes, or would landscaping for mobile home parks be addressed within a separate section of SMC aside from this chapter we're looking at?
So currently under 1710.370, yeah, we do have that section B, relationship to surrounding land uses, that does reference our landscape code under the same title. And
Basically buffering, right?
yes, and so I have 2 thoughts on it. One would be to, for any commissioners, if you have specific ideas, to share those with Jen and I, or with Councilman Chilson about specific ideas. Otherwise, short of that, what I'd recommend is that we work with Mr. Chilson to identify appropriate sections, and it's Mr. Chilson's ordinance, and so we will, as staff, provide information to him as he sees fit, and he will include those elements.
If we postpone.
Yes.
So, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. My wife is actually coming out of surgery, so I have to go. I would leave with 2 final asks potentially for the commission. One thing I would comment on the landscaping is, yes, that pertains to mobile home parks, but kind of falls outside the scope of what I was originally looking at with this code revision. The totality of the code that I'm proposing to the commission tonight is focused mostly on protecting residents of those parks. So things like notices, basically protecting the quality of the housing and the housing itself. So focusing on the health and safety while they live there, and also handling the displacement process in a responsible way that is fair to the tenants so that they have the means to find alternative housing. I would love to see that passed tonight. Again, if the commission has reservations about the notice period on that, I would be fully supportive of amending that tonight to 1 year instead of 18 months. If that would buy the support of the commission, I would fully on board. However, if the commission feels strongly they'd like to expand this well beyond just the protection of the residents there to look at a more holistic revision to the mobile home park code, I'm also fully supportive of that. And if this were to be postponed, I would just request that it be postponed to the August meeting. But I would also be happy to work with any commission members and staff on making that happen. But I will leave with saying I thank everyone for their consideration of this evening. I think there's been a great conversation on this and very valid questions and points made on this tonight. So thank you all for that. And I will be looking forward to seeing how this goes tonight later and have a chance to review the meeting.
Thank you, Councilman, and good luck to your wife. Your recovery.
Thank you.
Okay, okay. We do have to have a public hearing. Yes, so Chair would open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the public wishing to testify with respect to resolution PZ 2024-010?
Don't we have to notice that first? Don't we have to notice a public hearing first?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Vice Chair Murray, would you mind turning on your microphone?
Well, that wouldn't be a bad idea. I turn it on and off at will. So the chair would now open the public hearing on resolution PZ 2024-010. Any comments on the change in the mobile home parks code? Hearing and seeing none, the public hearing is closed. It's back to the commission. I see it. We have a couple of options. One is to postpone and one is to make amendment and then see if that's sufficient to get the resolution passed.
I move to amend to 365 days. And at another time, consider the landscaping.
Okay. So your amendment is to change the language in the resolution to insert 365 days where it references section D, that it would be 540 days, that would be changed to 365. And then the other considerations you would want to take up, that's not a part of your amendment. Yeah. Is there a
Agree.
second for that amendment?
I second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, vote on the amendment.
Commissioner Topfest,
Yes.
Commissioner Burton.
I'm sorry, this is just for the
Oh,
change of 540 days to the 365 days?
That is correct. Sorry, I should have specified. So this is a vote on the motion to amend the resolution, changing section D from not less than 540 days to not less than 365 days.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Commissioner Turner,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith-Gailey,
Yes.
and Commissioner Murray.
Yes.
That your motion to amend the resolution passed.
Okay, the resolution as amended. We've had discussion of whether or not we should delay and to be able to incorporate any changes we would like to see in the ordinance concerning landscaping, et cetera. If anyone wishes to make a motion to postpone. Chairs-
Commissioner Burton, really quickly, if we were to pass this tonight as is with the change of the 540 to 365 days, do we still have the option to amend this if it was put forward by a commissioner at a later meeting?
Well, John, I mean, I think we can bring that forward at any point, right? I mean, if the commission's sense that they would like to address this, we would ask staff to put together what the existing ordinances say with respect to mobile home parks and any landscaping requirements beyond what is currently in the ordinances. And what do you say?
That is correct. So the resolution before you tonight is a resolution seeking your recommendations. And if it is passed tonight, it will be introduced according to Mr. Chilson at the very next meeting, which is next week, Wednesday, and then a hearing would be held in 3 weeks. If there are sections here that you want to further refine and do additional work to, at any point in the future, you can request staff bring forward modifications, work sessions, discussions on this portion of the ordinance, the Title 17, and we can work on that. And I think Jen has a comment also.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but a couple months ago, we had a short-term rental resolution that passed and our code got changed. And actually Jordan wanted to change it at the council level and further amend it. And at that point in time, he would have been able to, if it was within a certain time frame, to even make amendments to the code, even though it passed planning and zoning. So conceivably could, per se, Councilmember Nelson make an amendment to the code next week to have the intent of the landscaping, even if we pass it as is right now.
So, council members, yeah, at their own discretion, once it's up for hearing and it's on the floor, they can amend it as they see fit. They take the recommendations of the planning commission seriously. And I say that with all sincerity. I've talked to all council members, and they take this commission very seriously, and they take their recommendations very seriously. So, but they do have, they are the ultimate legislative body. And so whether it occurs after the commission has made its recommendation, that can happen. And I does that answer or clarify your comments, Jen?
Right. So conceivably, the landscaping code could be changed within the next week and it still pass in the time frame and isn't changed. We don't have to postpone anything, but we could still do some research on the back end.
Well, Councilmember Chilson said he wasn't interested in us addressing landscaping. So if another council member wanted to, that could happen. But he just wants the tenant things answered.
Well, I guess Councilmember Chilson said quality of life, and I feel like this actually kind of coincides with that. So I don't know. Maybe he just hadn't thought about it yet.
Certainly.
And I appreciate this discussion, and certainly this is my opinion, but I do want to second what Mr. Zarneski just said. And I know personally I would be interested in landscaping code for mobile home parks because I do support beautification and standards and good quality of living. Whether that is appropriate to do now with this ordinance or to bring that back. I know landscaping, those things does take maybe some research and staff time and things for Jen and John to be able to put together. But I did just want to note that, if you bring something forward, I think the council's going to consider that with due consideration. There probably is support for looking at those types of things. I think what Mr. Chilson was trying to do, and I hope he forgives me for speaking for him, was, these couple of things, but I don't think that he would discount doing other things, but I think he was kind of focused on this particular issue due to recent events. So I appreciate the opportunity to comment on that.
Sure. My sense is, as I stated earlier, I don't think we're on safe legal ground. I'm not a lawyer with respect to changing the number of days. I don't think I would want to hold up the commission's decision to move forward with 365. I'll probably vote no on the resolution, but I would certainly appreciate if staff would at least research whether or not changing those number of days is within legal grounds.
I can answer that. Our legal, um, our lawyer did indicate that expanding the number of days is not an issue. To me, one of the things that was brought up was its application and whether it would apply to existing versus only new. But for sure, he did indicate that expanding the number of days is within our
Right,
purview.
right. And thanks for that clarification. That's really what I'm referring to, that we have existing operators. Are they covered by the expansion of the language? And if the council can consider that, or at least have that memo that says, yes, indeed, that they are also underneath that requirement, then that's fine. So we have the amendment. Have we done the amendment? We have, huh? So we're on back to the main motion as amended. Any further discussion?
Yeah, Commissioner Anderson here. In regards to discussing the landscaping and beautification, if you will, my opinion on this is with respects to Jordan's timeline of wanting to get this through for these other meetings he's done. We have it here in front of us now. If we postpone it, it's going to come back to us, and at that time, we'll give maybe staff and ourselves more time to look into it and then attach what we want onto this. Where I feel like if we pass this through and say, we'll get to that later, we don't have time until we create time, and we don't have that either. So there's plenty of things going on all the time. I think that it's not a big deal per se to move this 2 months out. It didn't sound like Jordan was hot to trot to get it done today when we did bring up these issues. So I think that if we did postpone it in regards to staff's time and everything else, and we could keep it on the front burner, I guess you would say, where if we postponed it, I think that it would easily fall off, and there's plenty of priorities out there that are trying to jump in front of this right now. So that's my humble opinion.
Does it include a motion
Yes, that would be my motion, Retro.
to postpone
To postpone,
the
yes. Motion
resolution to the August meeting? Is that what I'm understanding?
correct.
Okay, is there a second?
This Charlene, I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
All right. Motion to postpone to the August meeting. Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith-O'Galey,
Yes.
Commissioner Murray,
Yes.
Commissioner Turner,
Yes.
Commissioner Burton,
Yes.
and Commissioner Topest.
Yes.
Motion to postpone passed.
Okay, that completes our resolutions. We're down to public comments without prior notice. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment? Hearing and seeing none, the public comment period is closed. We're down to reports. I'd like to take a quick recess for 5 minutes.
I think it's raining because we're missing the concert.
You didn't know you were in for a long meeting, did you? You're getting big for all the turn.
I know, it looks like I could have a gloomy first little Wednesday.
No, after being so beautiful yesterday, and then like I just felt bad for all the people setting up their booths. I mean, I feel like last year they were doing it in either the wind or the rain every time, but still,
There were times like my fingers were just numb.
yeah.
It was so cold.
Yeah.
Like, this is something.
Yeah. I mean, right now it's showing 95% chance of rain right here. So. Say hopefully next week is amazing. Right now, next Wednesday says 61 and partly sunny. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Every Wednesday that we're in here, it's rain.
Yes, it's fine. Only the first Wednesday.
way, but he's also providing the discount.
My mom continues to pay that monthly.
That's why we need more storage facilities. The goal is to be out of here by 8 o'clock, just so that we all are clear.
You guys have been here for a while today.
I know, I know, I know. Thank you for persevering. That's all I can say. Okay, down to reports. Mayor, do you have anything to share?
I'll keep this brief. Our last city council meeting lasted 15 minutes. I think you've well surpassed that. But there is an opening on the Borough Planning Commission, and I would be interested to know if any of you would like to have an application to that position. It's meets, I think they're still meeting twice a month and planning, plat commission, stuff like that. So if anyone is interested, please let us know so we can get the proper paperwork done. Okay, that's all I've got to say tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Nelson.
Well, I felt last time I talked quite a long time at the last meeting, so I will follow up. I was not at the 15-minute meeting, so that was very easy. But before that, I'll just note, last time I was here, I talked about some of the development agreements that were coming before council, and some of that conversation happened last meeting in regards to the development up off Mackey Lake here that came up again tonight. I will just note that one of those agreements was approved, the one on Diane Lane, but I'd spoke about the Special Assessment District Turn Development Agreement for Whistle Hill, and based on the wishes of the property owner, that was not approved. They decided not to go forward with that particular development at the level that the city was able to put in. So that was not enacted based on that recommendation. Then budget, May 8th meeting, we did a donation. I think I mentioned to carts for some transit for $5,000 the city council approved. And before that 15-minute thing, there was a work session on the budget. As a reminder, the city does a 2-year budget. So this is the middle of that cycle. And this is where the administration comes forward with any adjustments of things that are needed, salary, cost of living, things that came up. And I think it's, I looked at it, I watched the video, I promised, Mayor, I was paying attention, and I think there were just a few issues of some little things that are going to come up, and I think that's going to get introduced fairly quickly, maybe next meeting to get voted on before the fiscal year. And that's my report, but I'm happy to stand for questions.
Any questions? Thank you, Dan. Down to director's report.
I'll try to be brief too. The one thing I do want to share with you is next week at the council meeting, there will be a work session on the capital plan, the CIP. So if you are interested in hearing comments, deliberation on that plan and where our dollars go for capital projects, it will begin at 4:45 PM on June 12th. And then also to further the mayor's plug for serving on the Borough Planning Commission. The city did work hard in maintaining its seat on that commission. And so if anybody has the least bit of interest, I do encourage you to apply. I believe they even pay money. I think they'll give you money
double
to
R.
attend.
Double
Yes,
R.
double,
In-
right. And that is all I have. I know Jen's got some information as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By code, I'm required to let you know about all of our violations that we've been addressing. So we sent a notice of complaint to a property owner as they were storing materials in the right of way, and then they came into compliance pretty much within 24 hours. We also worked with the police department and door tagged another premise that was unsightly, a public nuisance, and they also came to compliance within about a week. We're actively looking at camping violations. We have a couple pockets of the city that we have known kind of, not necessarily repeat offenders, but just known people that have property that come here to camp. Our code right now states that camping in some areas of the city is allowed for 2 tents, 2 RVs, up to 30 days. And there are people who, have cleared a lot and just want to camp here all summer. And so we're looking into those and figuring out how best to do enforcement as well as outreach of education for that code. We have a couple of abandoned houses or unsafe houses that are not suitable to our building code. We've looked into to 2 of them for many, many months now, working with our attorneys, working with the Public Works Department, with utilities, working with HEA and NSTAR to ensure that those type of utilities also aren't dangerous. So we've come into some steps forward, but we've also had a lot of hurdles, and so we're still working on that. We also have worked on a short-term rental issue. We try to give the short-term rentals ample time to come into compliance and receive a permit, and we did eventually, for the first time, send a notice of violation, but they have since come into compliance. And then we have one that's a zoning permit violation that they didn't receive a zoning permit within a year and a half of kind of opening their business doors. And their building permit was also, kind of in this temporary state for too long. So we're actively working on that one too. So that's my update of our violations. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're down to commission comments. We'll start online. Charlene, anything to share?
Nope, just have a great week. Thanks.
Mark?
Yeah, thank you for everyone for a good meeting. I thought there was a lot of good conversation, a lot of insight. And everybody, yeah, just like Charlene said, have a great week.
Yep, thanks, everyone. We still have John for one more meeting, right, at least? And who's bringing the cupcakes, or what are we? Let's get on that.
I think it's a roast, isn't it?
Is it a roast?
Yeah, it's a
Oh,
roast.
man,
It's a-
there's
it's a
his chair
private
right there. Perfect, thank you, guys.
I'm wondering, the commercial core talks, is that indefinitely put off, or when are we gonna do that? Why are you leaving? We haven't done this yet.
Just a quick response. I can tell you that, and I have been telling you that's been on hold until we can get our riverfront coordinator on board.
Okay.
And we are, I think we have just about done that. I don't think it's been
Good.
completely finalized, but it's 99% there.
Great.
And at that point, we will begin laying out our plan for moving forward with things like the zoning code amendments, street design amendments, and then working with property owners and looking at infrastructure and those types of things. So it's not far off.
Great. Yeah, I think in light of the resolution that we had tonight, it just is another reminder of, I think most of us feel that storage yards are unsightly, although they are necessary. I don't feel like they should be in our commercial district. I feel like they're industrial. And so I don't know, anyway, just makes me feel even more of the urgency of creating that commercial core district, or maybe looking again at even our regular commercial district. Could we make some adjustments, or maybe even just make a cap, like you can only have 10 storage yards or something. Anyway, have a good week.
Mr. Turner.
John, what's the status of your replacement?
I believe the city manager will make an announcement shortly, but that's all I know at this point.
Well, thank you for your forbearance. My first meeting and maybe my last, according to the mayor, if I can't get it done on time. We're at 7:54 though, I'll have to report. Without any further comments, meeting adjourned.
6 minutes of silence, is that okay?